Alrighty, I know I took a week off from the podcast, but it was spring break, so what are you gonna do? But this morning I am joined by Darrin Gray from the P4 Ministry, Pro Player Prayer Project, and many other things. So again, great to have you on. And I saw that you were in Indianapolis last night at the Final Four Championship. Were you able to take in the games on the Saturday as well?
I didn't go to Saturday's games.
Mhm.
It's a funny thing. It's counterintuitive. The Saturday games are far more difficult to get tickets for than the national championship game, because there's four teams all vying for a limited supply.
Hmm.
But for the tickets that we did have, we made sure that our donors and our stakeholders got a chance to go to the game. For that, we had people in from all over the country that were part of that, and we had a wonderful series of events. Many of your stakeholders in Canada may not remember a gentleman's name by the name of Steve Alford, but Steve Alford played for a very famous coach in Indiana called Bobby Knight.
Yes.
And Bobby Knight from IU was a legendary coach that ultimately led to a couple of national championships. And so Steve was our awardee at a big event that we helped to produce called the John Wooden Keys to Life. Now,
Hmm.
I suspect some of your listeners and viewers may be familiar with John Wooden's legendary work, one of the winningest coaches in all-time NCAA history. Well, he went to Purdue, which is right here in Indiana, where I live,
Yeah.
and then went on to coach in at UCLA. And what a joy to be affiliated with his story and then using his pyramid of success to help raise up the next generation of athletes so that they might be on purpose at and working toward God's ultimate goals for their lives. So it's a good deal.
It definitely is. I mean, if you look at John Wooden's work, as you say, like it goes way beyond the basketball court, and I think what
Mhm.
he had 10 championships in a row or something like that, or it is quite legendary. And then there's all these books and
Yes.
things on that, right? And again, that's about the legacy that you leave, right? And I think that speaks greater to sports as just the platform, and everything else just kind of falls into place of higher purpose.
Yeah, you nailed it. The little things that make a big difference. Can you tie your shoelaces? He was legendary for simple things like this. Look, are your shoes tied correctly?
Mhm.
And teaching his players those little things so that they might go on to become what God ultimately calls them to be. But there's so many layers of influence. There are three buildings in the world that have the wooden name on the side of it. One of them is in Martinsville, Indiana, where he grew up. Another one is in California, and then one's in Xenia, Ohio. Well, Xenia, Ohio, which is equidistant between Dayton and Cincinnati, so Midwest for your international viewing audience, but that place is called Athletes in Action. And Athletes in Action, which you have chapters of also in Canada,
Mhm.
does a great job of helping to team up with John's legacy to help again raise up the next generation of athletes. And we love the work that we do, and it's just a joy to be with you here today talking about these kind of things.
It definitely is, and the more I've kind of lived life, and again, I'm mid 40s now, and it's more than the game, as I've said here, and just and it's about the influence you can have in a player's life. We've built it
Yes,
for hockey teams and that sort of thing. But again, you've spent time. You were at this year's Super Bowl hanging out with Tony Dungy there, and I see
I
Peyton Manning
was.
there in the back, and
Yes.
you know, and just his legacy as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy who could have kept coaching, but then most coaches get fired, and he said, I'm kind of done with this, and I'm going to go on to other things, and went into prison ministry, was a mentor to Michael Vick, and all of this, and um, writing books and whatever else. You help write a book with him, and
Yeah.
so can you just kind of maybe share what you want, but just kind of that friendship that you have with Tony.
Yeah, God uses all kinds of people
Yeah.
to help accomplish his higher purposes.
Mhm.
And I was the general sales manager at a media property in Indianapolis. And lo and behold, I got a phone call from the Indianapolis Colts in 2002 that we had a new head coach and he wanted to do some fatherhood programming in the community in and around Indianapolis. Well, I was intrigued. I was a young father at the time. I had a 4 year old at home and, probably working too much, maybe not as attentive as I should be. And all pro dad, which is the emblem that I wear on my shirt here, was the brand they wanted help with. And so I helped to get involved there, volunteered, and found a way to help them raise some friends and funds to ultimately help expand that missional program. And lo and behold, over time, I took on the opportunity to do that full time. And for
Mm.
11 years, I traveled the nation helping to operate what we called the All Pro Dad Father and Kids experiences, which were carefully choreographed experiences with 1,500 fathers and kids on football turf, either at the practice facility or the stadium. To date, All Pro Dad has produced hundreds of these events in all kinds of different settings. And so I helped to lead that charge and build out a group of NFL ambassadors that would become stakeholders as well as spokespersons for All Pro Dad, sharing their love of family, yet living at a high level of in sport. Using the platform as you were talking about earlier. And so I got to have a front row seat in a time in Tony's life prior to him winning the Super Bowl in 2007 as the first black coach to ever do such a thing, head coach in the NFL. So that was a big deal. And on that day, I have a picture right here. I'll show this little photograph
Hmm.
happened inside a locker room right after the game, and that went viral to tens of millions of people all over the world about how it is to give credit to the Lord in a very authentic way after the game. You can do that on the podium too, which many of the guys did, including Tony, when Jim Nance asked him, giving credit to the Lord. But then in the sacred places in the locker room, kneeling down and going, "Thank you, Lord, for bringing us here." So it was a remarkable journey. It continues. I've got a very large event with him next week in Tampa, Florida, around mentoring and literacy. So I won't lead into that yet. I'll land the plane to allow you to ask some follow-up questions. But Tony is a very genuine leader.
Mhm.
And now is very involved in a whole variety of missional outreach programs like prison ministry, literacy strategies in classrooms, ways to really make the world a better place. And so it's an honor just to be part of that with him.
Yeah, and again, I'd be remiss to think about the passing of his son about a year and a half prior to winning the Super Bowl.
That's right.
And I remember when he gave credit to the Lord, and it was,
Yeah.
oh wow, like again, I've been a believer most of my life, but it's like, you know
Yeah.
what, just because you're NFL coach doesn't make you immune from difficulties, right?
Yeah, you're so right. And that was his best team ever. And so, folks, don't fully understand that 2005 team when Jamie died was a very, very special team. And then, of course, he had his Bucks teams prior to that down in Tampa Bay that were very, very good with Warwick Dunn and John Lynch and Derek Brooks and, a whole cast of amazing football players like Warren Sapp. I mean, it was a who's who. And so I say all that to say sometimes. The plan doesn't always go exactly as you planned it, but God has a bigger plan. And although it was delayed by a year and a few months for him to ultimately go on and lead the Colts to a Super Bowl, it was a remarkable time, and we learned a lot along the way.
Mhm.
And then how is it that we use those learnings to help inform what we shall do in the world to leave a legacy of faith, of hope, of love? And I'll give you this little snapshot, but Tony doesn't really sign autographs anymore unless he's able to sign it with a Bible verse.
Hmm.
And that verse goes like this: what would it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? So this notion of you might want my earthly signature and I'll give it to you.
Hmm.
But I want you to know that it can't comes at a cost, and the cost is you got to understand that I'm anchored in Christ and very devout in my faith. And so Tony is remarkable that way. He's published over 30 books now across a variety of genres. And he is very, very a special guy, lives in Tampa, and somebody that I admire greatly and enjoy the opportunity to spread the good news. But now it's about exponential. Like, how is it? How does his downline, Leslie Frazier, who was the associate head coach at the Seattle team that won the Super Bowl this year. It's about, Mike Tomlin's ongoing
Yeah.
influence. I think Mike's going to get into broadcasting here soon, is my hunch. And we'll
Yes.
see where that goes. And it's an exciting time to work in and around Tony's ecosystem to help touch the lives of people. But so much more than just Tony in the world of Pro Player Prayer Project. It's
Mhm.
about any athlete that wants to get active and understand their identity in Christ so that they can share that there's victory beyond competition. I love competition. I want to win. I want to win every time I take the field of play. But I also understand that it's not so much about whether you win or lose. It's about what you do when you win and what you do when you lose. How do you respond? And then how do we do that in a way that can bring honor to God,
Mhm.
winning or losing, and then ultimately find a way to share that with those around us that might inspire them to be the best version of themselves in whatever context they find themselves in. So that's a few things I've learned along the way. But how else can I respond to any thoughts or questions you might have, Steve?
Well, I mean, it's funny you should say that. When the Jays were in the World Series, again, I'm in sales, and a pastor here from town who I know comes in. He goes, Steve, it's not about winning. I'm like, well, I
Uh,
kind of would like the Jays to win, but he goes, okay, how is God being magnified in this series? And this was before 6 and 7. I think this was about game 4 or 5.
yeah,
And it was like, okay, yeah, okay, I see the perspective, right? And then they came back about a month later, and I said, okay, Dave, I think I get what you mean. And
yeah. It's
yes.
hard. It's really hard at first because, simultaneously in the NFL, let's use that context,
Mhm.
you got to win to keep your job.
Yeah.
But even the best coaches of all time only win about 67% of their games. So that's two-thirds.
Hmm.
Well, that's a lot of losing, and that's the best ones.
Yeah.
And so you do have to win to keep your job, and yet at the same time you can still have structured faith centers inside of the teams. You can have chaplains and chapel services and faith ministry and coaches ministry and wives ministry and all the things that need to happen to make sure that you have a really healthy ecosystem. And we know that everybody that we're interacting with, they're not all believers in Jesus Christ. That's okay. That just means that there's a mission field right there in our midst. And how can we be kind to people? How
Yeah.
can we love them where they are? How can we show them the love of Christ without making them feel that we're excluding them in some way? Because we're not. Everyone's welcome. How can we love on them, invite them into a journey to understand that when you sort of get it straight, that it's academic, athletic, social, spiritual, it's a multi-dimensional approach. And hey, let's start with the social dimension. Like, how are you? How can I be supportive of you? How can I serve you? And when you start there, then it makes it really easy to go to the next step because sometimes they'll ask you why. Why are you so dang kind? I thought you were here to compete against me. And I'm like, I am. If you want my starting job, I am. And yet, how do we come together, even in the midst of that conversation, to understand that we serve an audience of one? There's just one
Mm,
that we serve.
yeah.
It's a victory beyond competition. How do we get our inside game right? Whether that's high character or high Christ, and kind of moving toward that higher challenge in our lives, and ultimately understand that it's not about us, and it's about God in us. So that's it.
Yeah, it's I had a former Blue Bomber on, Winnipeg Blue Bomber on, and he played for the Bombers 15 years ago, and he talks about playing for the audience of one. And
Yes.
it's like, aha, right? So whatever you're in your professions, again, sports is on the bigger platform, but it is just that audience of one and playing for him. And if you can do that right, I mean, that's all that matters at the end of the day, right? So what is kind of your daily like with all these, like you have Zoom calls with all 32 NFL teams or
I have met over the years with most all of the 32 NFL teams. When I'm at the Super Bowl,
yeah.
I'm doing a variety of things. So let's just talk about that. I think your viewers might find it interesting. So,
Yes.
sports media mission, sports media philanthropy, sports media ministry. They're all connected: ministry, mission, and philanthropy. So, how do we work together to go to the hard places? For instance, go to the children's hospitals. We did 7 children's hospital visits at the Super Bowl so that we go in with many athletes that your viewers would know, like Manti Te'o from the NFL Network, Anthony Munoz, the greatest Latino ever to play in the NFL, Tony Dungy, so many others that we will go in and bring joy to the kids and their parents, knowing that a large percentage of the people that we're on mission with that day, when we're bringing them baskets of hope, won't be alive this time next year. So when the Super Bowl moves from San Francisco this year to LA next year, they won't be with us. And yet we brought joy enough to fill a room and to do that again and again and again. So we made time for street corner outreach. We made time for special events. We made time for to go on the Pat McAfee show and bring the love of Christ inside of a public context, talking about secular football things so that we can earn the right to share the kindness and the love of Christ so that people might be curious, might want to engage, and ultimately get on board with the highest calling, which is to be a follower of Christ. But we love the work that we do. That took months and months and months of planning. People see the big events that we are at and the things that we do, whether they're the church service that we did the night before the big game, or whether it's something that we do in the media. And yet all of those plans are just done in a way that hopefully bring honor to the Lord and allow His light to shine as we talk about faith, family, football, things that really matter.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, when you talk about the Children's Hospital, there's a dying Blue Jays fan. He wants to meet all the Blue Jays before his,
Mm,
ultimate passing. It's been in the media. It's just kind of like, whoa, this is much greater than just sport, obviously. How many Super Bowls have you been to, and what have been some of the more of the highlights that you've kind of encountered? When you
yeah.
talk about that, I can't help but think about Dan Orlovsky praying for Damar
Yeah.
Hamlin right on
Come
the
on.
right after just bow the head right in ESPN. It's like, and nobody's going to argue with that. It was very
Yeah,
good.
at the second annual Pro Player Prayer Project, the first of which was inspired by the Damar Hamlin incident. The second event, we actually had Dan come on and share that story
Hmm.
of what happened, and It's really remarkable. Leslie Frazier was the guy that put him in to put DeMar into the game. He was a defensive coordinator, so
Mhm.
at Buffalo at the time. He's now at Seattle. But you find a way to understand that it's happening inside of a larger context. And DeMar just got baptized here recently and continues to walk with other believers, helping him to grow in Christ. And we're just grateful to watch that story. But as for me and the Super Bowls, you know, um, I've been going for a little while now, and it's nothing about special about me. I serve a special God. I get to go to some special places. I do know a few special people, but a Super Bowl is just a place where influence coalesces for the week proceeding, where you can move with free, relative freedom when you have the right credentials to be able to get to leaders and ultimately gather the streams of influence and share what's important in sport. And I'm nobody special. I just came up in and around the media world and have an opportunity to use those skills to help make a positive difference in the world. But so many memorable moments from Super Bowls, especially in and around Media Row. Of course, it's fun to see, Gronkowski and Eli and Peyton and all of those folks. But it's especially fun to go on to secular media outlets and have an opportunity to share the good news in really interesting ways that ultimately help to spark in someone's heart, hey, I need to do better. I need to pay more attention to my wife. I need to lean in with my children. I need to be a better parent, husband, father, teammate.
Yeah,
And that's the kind of work that we do. But let me pause there and I can go deeper if you wish.
all good. Um, well, maybe go to the next lane, so to speak. But I always
Yeah,
try to ask people this: mentors, role models that have played a key role in your life, Darian.
such an important question. You know, Many. I had a great dad who was present at my games, and he was a product in some ways of an absent dad, an entrepreneurial guy that maybe my grandfather wasn't around for my dad, but my dad made that commitment to be there for me. In fact, I'm taking him to a Pacers game this evening and finding ways. I have lunch with him every Friday that I'm in Indianapolis. We find a way to prioritize those people in our lives that really really matter, and so I'm very committed to that, even when it's not convenient for my schedule. But as I think about other mentors and role models, I had many. I stand on the shoulders of a lot of strong men and women that helped to coach and guide me. But the one that comes immediately to mind is she actually was my senior VP at the Indianapolis Star. Her name was Kimberly. And she really took a notice of me in the early 90s as I was coming up inside that media ecosystem. And she found a way for me to be able to aggregate all of the sports accounts in the city. Now, it took many years to do that because they had already been assigned in a disparate way to other people. So I would have to find special ways to get the Pacers, the Colts, the Ice, the Indians, the Motor Speedway, of the amateur sports capital of the world golf tournaments that would come through. We had a pro tennis tournament here. And so over time, starting in the mid 90s, I was able to aggregate all those accounts, both sports and entertainment and media outlets, and begin to really build something special. And Kimberly was a great encouragement to me through that process and allowed me to build out some initiatives that served them because they needed to sell tickets. They needed to find ways to promote their brands and get fans excited about their particular sport or entertainment venue. But in the process, I learned about what it took to work inside of a sports world. My best friend was the owner of the Colts. Brother-in-law. Long story short, he became a mentor in my life. His name is Pat. We're still dear friends to this day. And, he worked for the team and ultimately helped to solidify those relationships so that when Tony arrived in 2002, because that was happening in 98, 99, 2000, when Tony arrived in '02, to orient your viewers that may not be familiar with his chronology in Indianapolis, I was ready. I was credentialed so that when it was time to begin to build All Pro Dad, I was staged and ready. But I'll call out Kimberly and Pat as two really influential mentors. It's good to be a protege. What is the product of mentoring? Who is the product of mentoring? Some people say a mentee, and I go, no, it's a protege. Like, do you want to get good, be a professional at something? And so I got to learn and submit myself to them, and then ultimately learn how to steward that influence in a sports context to make a positive difference in the world. And it's a great joy to have that. But I could cite many more, but those are a few that come to mind.
For sure. I mean, yeah, as I've always found, sometimes I'll stop recording, I'll get off. I'm like, oh, I should have asked that question, but
Yeah,
it's how it goes. So you're going to be in Tampa next week with Tony Dungy,
I am.
and working on, and you said it already, and I apologize. You're going to be working on something there.
Yeah, I didn't cite the actual missional project. It's called Elevate USA. In 19 markets across the United States of America, there is a very sophisticated in-school mentoring strategy at a high school level where full-time mentors are pouring into the lives of young people. It's actually a class. It's a class where the kids can learn, in essence, to become a protege to these mentors to teach 13 different character principles. And then the cool part is then we teach them how to go into elementary schools and to become a role model or be the role model that they already are, so that regular, everyday, well trained proteges can then go read books. And so we read Tony Dungy's children's books. This one is called Carson Chooses Forgiveness. And this one we'll be reading, but think about that. Then we're teaching the principle of forgiveness, which is a very important thing because if you hang around me long enough, Steve, I'm sure to let you down. I'm imperfect. Like I don't, we all are. And, perfectly made by the Lord and yet imperfect in our ways. And I say all that to say we read books like that in schools with pro athletes along with the proteges inside of the 19 markets, and that gives us a chance to teach godly principles to elementary students, and then give them a book, and they can take it home to their families and discuss it with their families, and then in essence, we're taking character education home, and we think it's a good deal, and that's what I'm working on with him. But before I do that, I will be participating in a golf outing the day before with uh, um, a great Hall of Famer by the name of Derek Brooks, who Tony drafted. Derek played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll be doing that the day before, raising friends and raising funds, which we're constantly doing. For any of your listeners that would want to plug in with any of our missional programs, they're certainly welcome to find me at Darrin Gray 2020. That's DARRINGRAY 2020. That's my social handle, whether it's Twitter or Instagram. I'm pretty findable if you Google me, but also have a website, darringray.com, DARRINGRAY.com. If you have any interest in being plugged in with what we're doing
Mm,
or helping to buy children's books for schools, or you
right.
want to come along on one of the visits that we do into the schools with the pro athletes, those are the kind of things that we're constantly orchestrating and leading to make a difference. And it takes purpose aligned people to come along with us to provide the resources to help make that happen. And that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up these names. I mean, I went to Tampa Bay for a stadium tour, and there's Derek Brooks, there's Tony Dungy's names on the stadium. It's going to get a
Right?
billion-dollar renovation, but anyhow, it brings me
It
back to
is.
Super Bowl 37 and all that, and I've had Brad Johnson on the show too. So I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, it's pretty nuts. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because
Just I got to interject because you
yeah,
brought
yeah,
it up. That
yep.
was Tony's team that won that game.
Oh, I
My
know,
point is,
I know it is.
Gruden got the victory, but Tony would tell you, he had assembled so many of those pieces, and John Lynch, Derek Brooks, Warwick was already
Yeah,
gone to Atlanta, Warren Sapp,
yeah.
and a lot of role players like Ellis Wims and other down linemen that were dogs in the trenches, and they just found a way to do something. Now, Gruden had to come in there after Tony was unceremoniously fired, and ended up in a perfect situation in Indianapolis. But we're always quick to remind folks that Tony had worked pretty hard and brought the that Tampa Bay team along in a really special way. So just proud of how that happened, and ultimately the fact that they got that Super Bowl championship, and then they got another one a couple years later. And what you wouldn't remember is that it was Tony Dungy's quarterbacks coach named Clyde Christensen that was the QB coach for Tom Brady,
Hey. Yes.
years later, that had been with him in Tampa, went with him to Indianapolis, and then back to Tampa. Well, first over to Miami, and then back to Tampa. But that's Tony's down. His influence continues whether he's physically present or not. So anyway, just a little banter around that. But we love the Bucks, and Tony gets to a number of games. His boys go to a bunch of Bucks games too, and it's awfully fun to cheer in the NFL, isn't it?
It sure is. I've been a Chiefs fan since I was 15. Plan to take the family down to Kansas City this year to take the entire family down to watch a game. So we can't wait for the schedule to come out in May. But yeah, when you talk about that, I'm convinced if Ricky Prohl doesn't catch that ball in the NFC Championship game, they win that game 6-5. Like, and they go to the
Right.
Super Bowl, right? Like, uh, but yes, a lot of people will say it was Dungy's team that won that Super
He
Bowl.
certainly, his fingerprints were on it for sure, but
All over it.
it allowed, he wouldn't have been open to get the call from the owner of the team. Remember that owner, his brother-in-law was my best friend. Like, so he's like, it's like all
Yeah.
of these connections. Like, God has a much bigger plan. We can't always see it. We look through the looking glass dimly, and yet
Mhm.
God's sort of working out his higher purposes. When you have that lens that just keep doing the right thing, and the results will come. They'll be the natural byproduct. This is sort of the simple teaching. No excuses, no explanations. You don't win on emotion, you'll win on execution.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, is that the system? And it's like, yeah, that's the system. Like, winning is the natural byproduct of doing things the right way over long periods of time. And when you get those fundamentals, which is Wooden-esque, Dungy-esque, you begin to go, oh, I could apply that on my kids' soccer team, or I could apply that on my kids' hockey team. And you're like, yep. And then that's the book I wrote, The Jersey Effect, with Tony's help: academic, athletic, social, spiritual, the
Hmm.
dimensionality of sport, all the subplots that go on inside a team. How do we minimize distractions
Yeah.
and move us toward focus, cohesion, understanding that when you have unity on a team, man, you can do great things. And it's not always the best team that wins. Sometimes it's the team that's most together and that believes in each other the most and is willing to work through hard things. And when you begin building that, and then if you are interested in reading Tony's books like Soul of a Team, or Uncommon a Life, or Mentor Leader, and you begin to see the philosophies that he shared, man, you can learn a few things. And we sure enjoy the work that we get to do, and finding guys like you that are tuned into that can then teach your tribe that you're building across the world. And so I just appreciate you having me on today to share a story here and there and hear the old names like Brad Johnson and others that, were part of, so many great things in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I was at the hockey game here in my town, and this one guy he's wearing the opposing jersey. He's 3.5 hours away. He goes, "Yeah, I watch your stuff all the time." I'm like, "Well, yeah." I'm thinking, "Well, you don't like any of it, like by a like, but you're watching." So it was kind of
Yeah.
mindful. Yeah, people are watching, and
They're
I
watching.
I
And the
enjoy this
funny thing
podcast.
is, and let's just use this point here now as an influence exchange for your listeners that maybe aren't as sophisticated in the social spaces. Like, you don't understand that the Instagram and YouTube algorithms actually pick up on likes, shares, comments.
Yeah.
Share is the ultimate friend. A like is good. It actually is really helpful, but your comments, even if it's just "go get them, Steve," or those positive things actually are the fuel for the algorithms that help us to grow. And so, I remember doing a lot of social in and around the NFL Combine that was here in Indianapolis a few weeks ago, and I was posting a lot about Fernando Mendoza and getting just literally millions and millions of likes, and because people are inspired by something, but we need you as the viewing and listening audience to chime in, get involved, and help to share that. And you may think it doesn't make a difference, but it actually does. And when you make a genuine comment and you share it and you like it, so we appreciate all that you're doing to help support Steve's. Podcast here and how it is that he's going about leading in all the right ways, leveraging media, learning new skills, and ultimately allowing for God's light to shine in some really important places.
No doubt. And that was the thing I was going to mention. I still remember the players that came to my classroom as a kid. So when the players come to the classrooms now, it brings me back. It just does, right? So again,
Yes.
just creating. I love what you're saying here. The ecosystem. Like we always talk about the coaching tree, but you're saying ecosystem because Dungy had influence in Leslie Frazier's life, Tomlin's life, etc. Right? And so that's what it's all about.
It
And
really is. Even as I think I looked a lot different in this one, but there with Mike at a big all pro dad event, stewarding that and kind of walking through
yeah,
that. And this is
right.
actually a painting. Looks like a photograph, but a
Yeah,
painting. And many of these men are my friends. I'll be with them with Tony in a few weeks. But obviously, this is a guy that sort of brought it to Indianapolis because he was so gifted, and he had been there a couple years before Tony got there, and
yeah.
but people forget that Peyton Manning started 3-13.
Yes, the
His
3 and 13.
rookie, hey, and I'll make a strong argument that he was the greatest audible caller at the line of scrimmage in the history of the NFL. He was more prepared than anyone else.
Hmm.
And people go, well, what about Brady and all the ring? And I'm like, man, Brady, no, nothing. Brady is unbelievable and so gifted, and yet Peyton and his pedigree ultimately, got a couple of Super Bowl rings, took him there another time, and I really believe that his preparation and his mindset and his ability, are you a follower if nobody is? Are you a leader if no one's following? And the answer is, not really. You've really got to have people that buy in, and everyone knew who the general was, almost like a player coach, almost like, what Bill Russell did back for the Celtics back in the day, where you've got a player coach that the people believe in, and they know that the opportunity to win together is really important. So it's fun, but just because I have Colt stuff on my walls, the point I was making there around Mike Tomlin and all of the coaches and the players that I've had the privilege of working and interacting with, it's about a much bigger tapestry inside a much bigger ecosystem of sport. And obviously that's happening in across all these things. World Cup is coming to the U.S. here soon. I was on the phone earlier today with the agent for, a World Cup champion player, and it's like, how do we steward influence across a variety of sports? I just happen to live mostly in an NFL world. I love the work that I do, and when I meet guys like you along the way, it's a joy to come and serve and support, see what I might do to share the good news on your platform.
Absolutely. I mean, I was thinking about this. I mean, Indianapolis, it's kind of the Mecca. You have
It
the Indy
is.
500. The
Yep.
NFL Combine's there every year. The Final Four, it's on the tour stop, just like
Yeah.
biggest.
Every 4 years contractually. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there's opportunity right there. People talk about the 1040 window, and rightfully so, but it's right here. You don't have to get on. You're getting on planes, but you know what I mean?
It's right here.
It's right
And,
here.
we love Indy. It's a very centrally located state, one that you can get. More interstates intersect in Indianapolis than any other city in the United States of America. It's not the geographic center, and yet it really is a great hub as it relates to sports. For many years, we've been branded as the amateur sports capital of the world, and we certainly are that. More amateur sports governing bodies, including the NCAA, are based here. So that gives us some unfair advantage in those kind of sports. But truth be told, like you said, with auto racing, we've hosted Formula One race. We've, NASCAR every year with the Brickyard 400. The Indy 500 is just epic. It's something that everyone should come to at least once in their lifetime to understand
Mhm.
what it's like to have, 300 plus thousand people in one venue, all sort of cheering and being involved in that. But yeah, Indy's special place, but there's a lot of special sports cities, and we're blessed to be part of that. And then Athletes in Action, which is one of the many roles and hats that I wear in life, is a great organization serving the needs of athletes, athletesinaction.org for those on here that would want to learn a little bit more about the principles of sport. There's info in there from a coach's perspective, from players' perspective, from parents' perspectives, all kinds of free resources. We can't wait to see what God's going to do in this next chapter of AIA's life. For those of you that like and appreciate Tony Dungy on May the 8th and 9th, for those of you that hear that, he'll be on the campus of Athletes in Action, the headquarters in Xenia, Ohio. That's equidistance between Dayton and Cincinnati. That event is free or nearly free. It's called Hall of Faith, and we're inducting Tony into, along with his wife Lauren, into the Hall of Faith. We've got children's book readings and a marriage and family conference, and the ability to then to influence and share Tony's legacy. And then we're building legacy curriculum with Tony and Clark Kellogg, who is the NBC commentator, excuse me, a CBS commentator. But we're grateful to be able to
Wow.
bring all that together. But that event's open to the public. You can learn a little bit more about that. Just if you look at my Instagram page, I'll begin posting a little bit about that. Remember, that's Darrin Gray 2020, DARRINGRAY 2020. And if you want to come down and see Tony at that event, 1:30 in the afternoon, and certainly accessible for those that live in Toronto, not too far of a trip down. So we love the work that we do, and it's just a small snapshot that I've shared with here today. But we believe that sports is a very unique way to connect with people, and here's why: give them what they want. In other words, I want to be a better athlete. I want to be more resilient. I want to learn how to play on my team. Okay, give them what they want so that we can give them what they most need. Now, what they most need is an opportunity to at least have a saving relationship with Christ, to understand that they fit into a larger context. And if you can help people to sort of build up their superpower of humility, You can help him to understand that, then having strong confidence in the Lord that he's going to come through, win or lose. Man, that coupled together is a powerful way to go about leading in the world of sport. And then build your own platform, find a way to share. But we talk about it this way, worry a little bit less about your platform and really worry a lot more about your character.
Yeah.
Worry about, who you are and whose you are. And over time, God will do the multiplying. And from time to time, you get a post that goes viral. You touch a few more people and hopefully guide them back into this ecosystem, this platform that we've been speaking of today, so that they can know that people love them and God loves them too.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. I mean, I was gonna say we've maybe only hit the tip of the iceberg, but this has been so good here, Darren.
Yes.
I've just loved it, and thanks for sharing the pictures and everything else. Was there anything else that you'd like to say before maybe before we sign off here?
No, I think we did a good job of covering a lot of important topics to get people to understand that if they live at peace, on purpose, at God's pace,
Yeah.
at peace, on purpose, at God's pace, that things are going to go beautifully. And when they don't, you'll be able to restore, recover, do it with good friends that you love and trust. And we thank you for being a good friend. Invite me on here. It's been a long time coming. Thank you for your patience
No
and
worries.
for
Anytime.
allowing us to create an impact today.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime, as I tell everybody, anytime come back on again. That's all the best in Tampa, and I hope you win your golf game between Brooks and Dungy.
Can't wait.
Okay. Good deal. Well, God bless and all the
God
best.
bless you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
friend.
Yeah.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.